right. We're just going to start. There's going to be a very interesting talk here. You surely don't want to miss it. Welcome to Wool Talks. I'm Haiko, your host. We will have a conversation with some familiar faces we've worked with in the past. I was curious to hear what these designers and other initiatives they've been involved with are doing today. We call it the Alumni Spotlight. Maybe some feedback to start with.
Yeah, we are alumni. We met like almost 4 years ago in New Order Fashion with the old team. So for sure, I think we're alumni. Okay. What do you think?
I agree.
This is a good start. I've prepared a question for you. How did you experience your time here at New Order Fashion? How did it help to take your next steps in your career? And what drives you today? We've been keeping in touch a little, so we know a bit what's going on. But for everyone else in the audience, it might be new information. Maybe it's good to start with a quick introduction. 4 years ago, you met Valentine here, but could you explain in a few sentences, where do you come from in that sense in the past few years?
Okay, hi, I'm Anabel. I am a textile designer / scientist and also the co-founder of Kantamanto Social Club. I've been working in the beginning of the supply chain on material development for textiles, but also at the end of the supply chain with Kantamanto Social Club, which is an upcycled fashion platform that supports marginalized communities on the front line of textile waste. My co-founder is Dan. Haiko is wearing one of the outfits made in Kantamanto. It's all curtains. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me, and maybe Valentine.
Yeah, Valentine, a few sentences.
I'm Valentine Tinchant. I'm a circular fashion designer because I do a lot in the circular fashion industry. I have my own upcycling studio where I upcycle B2B and B2C, people's personal garments. You can come with your closet and instead of shopping in shops, you can shop in your own closet and upcycle your already existing clothes with me. I do this with brands as well. And I coach and manage a sewing atelier in Antwerp for people with a distance to the regular job market. And we try to create paid jobs for these people. We do local productions, local repairs, workshops. That's a bit of what I do.
Yeah, and Anabel, you already mentioned a bit about the initiative you're involved with right now with Dan. Moving back 4 years, when you both met, what were you working on back then and how was that?
I was working on Color Studios, which was a bio-based, biodegradable screen printing ink startup. I was always more in the material innovation field. And I think when I came in contact with the community about the secondhand textile trade and waste flows that come from the global north to the global south, I realized that I wanted to do something in that side of the supply chain because there are many communities that have to deal with the waste for us and their voices are never really heard in global decision making when it comes to the fashion industry. So that's the shift, and in general, New Order Fashion has been supporting me in that shift as well. It's growing together with the platform.
And we have some images of the global supply chain and the global south that is facing the consequences of textiles. For the ones that this is new to, could you raise your hand or do you know what we're referring to? Okay, maybe a brief elaboration on what is happening in Ghana and in the global south in general.
Okay, so I think the images is very clear. A lot of the secondhand textiles are actually sorted for different forms of reuse or recycling. And one of the flows is exports for reuse. And that flow is actually going all around the world. It goes from the Netherlands to Eastern Europe, then to Asia, and then one of the last locations is this market in West Africa. They receive 15 million pieces of discarded garments every week. As a community in the market, they receive it in bales like this. And as a community, there are 30,000 people upcycling, repairing, and recirculating about 9 million garments every week. They are one of the largest informal remanufacturing hubs in the world, but handle so much bad quality textiles because of fast fashion and the rate of consumption that some of their beaches actually look like this, that you can only see garments and plastic, and you cannot see sand anymore. This is one of the designers we work with. His name is Fake Money, and this is his atelier in the market where he upcycles outfits like what Haiko is wearing or the trench coat that I'm wearing. 5 or 6 different designers work in this small atelier.
And I think this image is very telling for the sheer volume of textile waste that is being discarded in the global south. And we talk about it, of course, but maybe we don't talk about it enough yet. And the realization that value chains, they end somewhere, and we should be aware when we buy our garments new or from certain brands. And what I've heard is that these bales, back in the days, the quality of secondhand clothing was quite nice, right? So there was money to be made by buying these bales. But now it's like a gamble, but because the quality of those bills are so low, right?
Yeah, so one of the retailers was telling us that this is one of the only trades that you buy a bale and you don't know what you're getting. They actually pray before they open their bales in the hopes of it being good quality. So in the past, it used to be 80% good quality clothes. But right now it's about 40%, and the rest are sold at very meager prices. So a lot of them are going into debt because of what's happening around the world. And honestly, we should see them as an important part of the supply chain because they are recirculating a lot of the waste that's coming from the global north. And I think that's very important. Like everybody here probably has donated something to the textile bins or to your local thrift stores, and you don't know where it goes. It ends up somewhere in the world, and it might end up in Ghana.
Yeah, so the Kantamanto community is a remanufacturing hub. I think that's brilliant. And what would you say we can learn from a hub like that?
So there's a lot of techniques that are done in the market that are very ingenious and very rooted in frugality. When we talk about sustainability, we forget that sustainability is not these big machines that are recycling a ton of textiles for us, but it's actually a lot of indigenous knowledge, a lot of knowledge from communities that have been tackling these problems for a long time now. And I think there needs to be a shift in knowledge systems and knowledge powers, because I think in informal communities, that's where all these interesting techniques of making men's boxer shorts from offcuts of shirts, or like little kids' dresses from women's shirts that are too small. So there are a lot of techniques there that are very interesting but not respected in the industry. So that's something that we're trying to do. We're trying to bridge knowledge over.
And to give them the appreciation they deserve in their role that they play in the global supply chains and value chains of fashion items in a way. And Valentine, I know that you also do upcycling and recycling of certain garments. How do you look at this story and maybe draw parallels with what you are doing?
When I started studying fashion design, I became aware of this issue. I was in my first year and I was like, I really want to be in the fashion industry, but I do not want to contribute to this. So how am I going to find my way to not contribute? Very early on in school, I think I was the first upcycler. My teachers didn't really know how to help me because they hadn't gone through those processes with a designer, but they trusted the process and let me free. In school, I knew I wanted to work with dead stock from brands or clients. Almost never bought any new materials. I would go to the markets, to my friends' houses, or in the bins at school. I would take yarn and prototypes, and I would just cut everything up and reuse that material. So I started focusing on that in school already. And in school, I always dreamt of having an atelier with a lot of different people with different skills and working together. And that somehow is taking shape now.
So it already was very present in your curiosity and trying to experiment. I briefly want to bring it back to the designers that we've seen in Anabel's story, because when you have conversations with them, how do these designers look at the situation in Accra?
It's an injustice, right? It's their land, their space, their home, and they're seeing copious amounts of waste coming into their land. But at the same time, they see upcycling method to express themselves, to also deal with an incoming flow of materials. Of course, they want better quality things. That's the biggest thing they talk about. But with how the world is shifting and mass consumerism, they understand a shitty situation to be in. The Ghanaians make do with what they have. They're a very strong community of people, and they're not the only market that is working on this. There's many markets around the world, specifically in Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia.
Looking at the Kantamanto community and the creativity present there, I think it's incredible when we look at your average upcycle workshop in the Netherlands almost. Valentine, you're in your own way, of course, mastered this whole expertise in your own craft, so you're an exception to me in that sense. No, but like the difference in the creativity we see in Kantamanto compared to upcycling here, there's so much we can learn from it. How do you look at that? What can we learn from those designers?
I think it's from the need to be resource efficient, and that opens up a whole new world. The fact that there is limited resource or limited feedstock that they have to work with. They can, of course, go to a fabric store to buy something new, but when they see the beaches, they also don't want to do that. So I think that's also something that we need to learn, especially in formal fashion education, that we should make use of the amount of clothing that we have already on this planet. And that pushes the boundaries of creativity. When you have a feedstock that is already a pair of denim jeans rather than an endless supply of meters of cloth that you can get.
It asks you to think differently about what is already there. Jaden, one of our talents this year, also was here during the previous talk, and he approached items as if they had every item had their own story to tell. So he was thinking about a bag, for example, what has it been through, what story does it carry, and then taking that into a new design is a brilliant way of doing that. There's a lot we can learn. You went there together with Dan, I believe. How was it to be there, and what kind of conversations did you have?
It was beautiful. There was so much happening in the market. Everyone had their own specialty. So they knew a guy who knew someone that is going to transform this item into something else. So they all had their own specialty. There are the guys that over-dye the denim, and they only do over-dyeing of denim. It was very overwhelming, to be honest. Overwhelming in many sense. Going to the beaches to do a cleanup. If every CEO of all the fashion companies were to just go there for an hour to pick up the garments and feel the weight of what's happening, they would think about their production quantities. The culture that surrounds upcycling is so beautiful. It's so attached to music, it's attached to a way of life and appreciation of material that is sometimes lost in Europe and still very much present in the global south. Maybe your grandmas had this sense of appreciation for clothes, but not anymore. Yeah.
I think the sense of appreciation is also what we try to do here with wool, of course. That's a material that has been present for thousands of years and that's being thrown away, the Dutch wool. So I think there's a parallel to draw with what we can see in Kantamanto and can see here. And talk about parallels, like you brought the initiative back to the Netherlands to show us here like what we can learn from it. What happened in the months after you went visiting?
Yeah, so this image is in Amsterdam Fashion Week, which is usually fashion weeks are very closed off for community events. They're very exclusive, but we wanted to bring something completely different. We wanted to bring that energy from Kantamanto here. So we collaborate with local upcyclers in the Netherlands or communities in the Netherlands to showcase to consumers and people in the industry that you can actually do a lot with the material that you have. This was specifically an activation with Knits and Notes, a community in Amsterdam. And we did a whole like crocheting, upcycling, making session with music from West Africa as well. It was amazing to see how people are on the ground cutting things up. And very free. It's a very freeing experience because a lot of them told us that they have never dared to pick up a sewing machine and started sewing something except for within this space. We do a lot with local engagement. We also want to work with more local upcyclers in the Netherlands because we believe that they need a platform and we can do that collectively. There's so many independent designers pushing this, but they're in silos from each other. We believe there needs to be a bigger movement to push consumers to buy these outfits as well.
So it's a lot of the knowledge sharing, which you mentioned in the start of a conversation, also shows there in the collective activations and efforts that you do. Valentine, how are you listening to the story? Because there's parallels with what you do. How do you look at this?
I think it's very inspiring to hear what they do. I think it's nice to create a bridge because what they are doing in Kantamanto is strong. It should be talked about more here too. If you see the beaches or the waste that is actually coming from us, like that's horrible. That's super sad. And yeah, I feel like it's also time for us to take responsibility and show that, give them a voice and make it more visible. Big respect.
I think it's a great initiative. We're super proud to see what you're doing, Anabel, in that sense. And Dan also, big credits, of course, to all the work. There's a lot to talk about because I would be curious about what are some challenges or how is it going with the project? Where do you want to take it? But let's keep that question for a second and Valentine, have a look at what you've been up to in the past few years because it's also a lot to cover. First of all, here's some of your works. When did you first get in touch with us as a platform? Do you still remember what you were working on back then?
2019, I just graduated from school and all the collections I did in school was upcycled. And for my final year, I was not very strong in pattern making, but I loved making collages. So one day I came to school with a collage made out of trash. And my teacher went crazy over it. And I really loved Paco Rabanne, like the linking techniques. And then my teacher was like, why don't you combine the collages and the linking techniques? I thought this will really push my pattern making learning because this is all mathematics and patterns and I'm dyscalculic and I was really bad in patterns. Nice. So I thought
How
for
many
the last...
prototypes did it take?
Oh, a lot. And a really good teacher who helped me calculating all these patterns. But then I was like, okay, I don't want to work with leather, even not leftover leather. I want to try and find a material that is sustainable. This material is the middle layer of a window of a car, the windshield, and that is actually 95% recycled to this material that looks like leather. And I thought that was interesting to work with for that collection. I just took my own trash and I scanned everything in collages and basically made it a whole art piece. But also now, what I want to do with that collection still is you can take all the collages off and the rings and recreate pieces from that. So I want that collection to be more like an ongoing collection and every few years change the whole collages and the whole art piece.
Wow. As people are coming in, we have some sheep in the room and you can actually sit on them. So if you want to join in and there's no space on the stands, you can sit on the sheep. Yeah, there's a modularity to it. One question I want to ask, how do you think of using that plastic between the two windows of... How do you come up with that?
I didn't make that material. It was a company where my father worked. He made packages for makeup and they're also doing sustainable packaging. And he told me about this material and put me in contact with the supplier. Yeah. But I don't know if today I would still use that material because it's still new and I feel like I prefer upcycling and really taking clothes apart. But I'm still proud of it.
I think it's a super unique design approach in that sense, and it might have inspired some of your later work. Before we look at that, we have some looks here that were in the temporary exhibit. Could you elaborate a little on what we see on that image?
That image, I did a solo expo here last year. These are pieces that I made for clients from their existing clothes. For example, the gold piece in the back was from a lady, but she wanted to make it more modern. The skirt was too small, so we cut everything up and mixed it in that outfit. The other outfit was also a donation. I did an internship at Anne de Meulemeester, and when they changed the direction of the brand, the previous designer dropped a lot of pieces. And then there is this stitch that they use a lot in Japan to repair denim. I've implemented it in my design. I call it the crazy stitch. It's not the official name of the stitch, but it's where you go back and forwards a lot. And that I'm applying in all my designs, if it's just on my label or on a detail, because I like how it looks. Without even cutting up the piece, you can make it still look different.
I think it's slowly but surely, maybe it already is one of your signature design elements. Talking about the story with the material that was originally used in cars, what are we looking at now?
When I did the graduate collection, a lot of artists up until this day, because it's 5 years old now, keep borrowing it, mostly artists for shows or something. But this car recycling company in Belgium called Fabel Auto asked 3 years ago to borrow one of those outfits for their auto salon. A year later, they said, like, why don't we do a collaboration? We have all these discarded cars and they're recycling the outside, but not the inside yet. So they wanted to see with me, like, is it actually possible to use this material from the car? So together with my social atelier, we created 2 looks and commercial, like, little pouches and wallets that we sold. And we showcased this at the auto saloon. The skirt is made from only belts from the car, so we really went to the car cemetery, and with a knife we cut out all the leather ourselves and all. Yeah, the thing is that these pieces, these leather pieces from the car, it's all small pieces because per seat it's quite small. So we've cut out all this leather, but there were all these small pieces, and the hard part, the material was doubled with something mushy. It was really glued. So that's a bit hard to actually reuse the leather in the right way. So I thought, why not play with the crazy stitch and cut up all these pieces in tiny pieces and just stitch them all on top of each other and create material in that way.
It's a whole new approach to patchwork.
I didn't make patterns, I draped it on the doll and I made piece by piece. And each piece I made, I draped it on the doll to see the shapes. And
almost a mosaic with car seat leather. And what did you take away from this project? Because it's quite a unusual collaboration, maybe. How does it influence your design philosophy in a way?
Honestly, with an industry that is not the fashion industry, but that has a big waste, I thought it was really interesting the way that company worked. They really let me free with the designs, and I really like that. They said, do whatever you want. The commercial products need to be a bit commercial. I think the material is really nice to work with, except the leather. If like that industry and the fashion industry would collab, I think there is ways to not glue, for example, the back part to that leather, or find ways to dismantle it more, because to dismantle it took a lot of time.
And that's one of those things you only come across when you start experimenting, and then you really realize, okay, if materials are glued together, I cannot reuse them. So maybe that's also super valuable if you're a car manufacturer.
I feel like it would be so good to reuse these materials, but there still needs to be a few processes or changes in the car industry to use that material in an easy way, because it took us so many hours to just cut it apart.
There's also something you're doing for Dutch Design Week, you have been doing in 2023, if I'm correct, right? What was the process that went into this beautiful design that Miriam is wearing?
Miriam saw on Instagram all my works and took screenshots of all my works and made a little mood board of all the works that she really liked of me. And then we looked together like what we could do. And she had a lot of this dead stock leather. And she loved my graduate pieces, so then I said, what if I remake one of these pieces with collages that reflect the Dutch Design Week theme of that year with her dead stock leather, because I didn't want to buy leather. To remake those pieces, I would never buy new material. So that's how that came to life.
It's funny. She's been following you along, and there was already a mood board, but you can start with. It's really nice to catch up with you also in this way. Of course, there's an audience today. I also want to give the opportunity, if you have any questions about the story we're discussing, feel free to raise your hand, and we'll have another microphone that we can pass around. What I would want to ask is more like, Anabel, we started with the Kantamanto story, and you have project funding, then you are able to actually start something, but how do you keep it going, keep it growing, and how is that going today?
Wow, difficult question.
We need money.
But actually, I think it's a really good bridge that you bring in Valentine and me today, because honestly, we would like to work with marginalized communities in the Netherlands as well, because we want to work with more social ateliers. From the techniques that we're learning from Kantamanto, we would like to understand how that can be implemented here in the Netherlands, and also support all these social ateliers with projects as well, and to redistribute the burden of secondhand textiles. We are also getting insights from the market, from the retailers that are telling us they're receiving stained items, things that have holes, things that they don't necessarily want. And they also appreciate color, patterns. In the Netherlands, a lot of people wear black, a lot of neutral colors. And that's something that in Ghana or in West Africa, they don't necessarily like so much. So we're trying to see if we can revalue the materials here that they don't want, so that we can share the load of the secondhand textiles. I think it's really nice what Valentine is doing, because you're actually doing something that we would love to collaborate with.
To redistribute the burden of discarded textiles, I think that's a brilliant quote. Aren't we taking the responsibility of someone else's problems? People in Kantamanto are carrying the load. If we start more social ateliers here, we could share that load. Shouldn't we also look elsewhere in the industry?
I think it needs to go hand in hand. Ultra fast fashion is not going to stop tomorrow. Fast fashion brands are going to continue. Unfortunately, even with policy, they're going to continue. So also the whole conversation of let's just stop exports. That's not going to solve the problem as well, because there is a community of people that are relying on these exports. Solutions need to be nuanced. I do agree, ultra fast fashion is terrible and it should be stopped. But the industry, the policies, rich people are still pushing that agenda. It's not just the ultra fast fashion, it's also the luxury brands. It's also all the other brands that are in the fashion industry. We are in some ways taking responsibility, but we're talking about taking responsibility as a whole, as the Netherlands, and creating remanufacturing hubs around the world. I'm from Singapore. I would like to see this in Singapore as well. It's about taking responsibility for the waste of the citizens versus the producers. I know a lot of activism is being pushed to push the producers to take responsibility. There's also the EPR, Extended Producers Responsibility, which is a tax for every garment produced. But at the same time, there needs to be parallel solutions towards making the industry better. Communities like Kantamanto are solely handling this, and that needs to shift.
So you would want to say there's a shared responsibility, there's policies like EPR that charge its manufacturers, so there's already a bit of a different load that's slowly being shared, and then by bringing social ateliers into our own environments, that's where we can educate and collectively as citizens share the load all together. Then it makes sense to me. And I would be happy to hear, Valentine, you run one of those ateliers. How does that work and what do you do together?
In Antwerp, I run one of these ateliers in Borgerhout. That's actually a place in Antwerp where a lot of refugees, when they come in, they actually stay in Borgerhout. It's an important place, I think, in Antwerp, because there is all the cultures in this one place. So people come, for example, refugees from the seaside just to hang out with each other. It's a place where you grow out from. So we started this atelier for the people in this area. So the people we are hiring is mostly the people who need jobs in that area. We work with open hiring, so you don't need to bring a CV, you don't need to bring a portfolio. You just come if you fit in the vibe and you know how to sew. You do a test day with me, and if that is good, you can enroll. Now we have around 10 people. They brought me in 1.5 years ago to bring in clients and to bring the atelier to a next level, because at first they were learning how to sew, but they didn't know how to approach the market or get paid work. Now we have a lot of work. The work keeps coming in. We do a lot of small productions, but we are radical in our atelier too. So it has to be either circular or sustainable or upcycling or super local. We also do repairs, and for us it's really important to do repairs also for a social tariff. They did a screening in the area, really on the streets, asked people in that area, what do you need in this area? And they said a place to repair clothes with social prices, preferably people who can come to your house to repair it. That's a bit impossible. But we started this initiative in Antwerp. But the thing that is quite hard in Belgium, the statute from all these people, like all the sewers in our atelier, because we have people who are in
government allowance
or who are in sickness allowances. And the thing is, for now, then you cannot pay more than their allowance. And that's really a problem of the system of the city, because it's also not fair that you can work and just make that much money. I think in Belgium it's around 1,500 a year on top of your allowance, or you lose your allowance. And for us, I think that's maybe the biggest struggle. Also, because I have 5 colleagues, they are also tackling that on a political level.
To me, it sounds like we come from this environmental issue, and as we are trying to take initiative and start these ateliers here locally, we run into the social side of the dynamics. Also, for the ones in the audience that might have questions for our panelists, there's a question here.
Hi guys. We are sitting today in 2025 edition of Touch Design Week. Just imagine that we go 10 years from now, 2035 Touch Design Week edition, and our beautiful host asks you that, hey, can you sum up your last 10 years? What you want that to look like?
So the atelier I'm working with now and the 10 sewers that we have, I would want to see that grow out into a big atelier, say 20, 30, 40 people. I would like to upcycle that stock from brands, B2B, B2C, creating something new, giving it back to them, and then they resell it. We did it with Uniqlo a few months ago. So I would want to do that, but more and bigger, so that brands, instead of having to burn their dead stock, they could send it to us. We could create some new collections from that. Keep doing repair for people in the neighborhood with social prices, normal prices. And I would like to have this big space where you can drink your coffee, but see how people are repairing your things, but also have this shared atelier where students can learn from the seamstresses, to have our own collection, not necessarily my collection, but with my team, that we create every month cool new pieces that are sold in our atelier. And my wish would be to actually hire and be able to pay all of these people and provide them jobs and security for the next 10 years. That would be my dream.
Okay. So I'm in 2035. I will be around community leaders here in Dutch Design Week from the communities that we work with. Right now, we started working with Kantamanto Market, and we also tried to bring 2 designers here this round for Dutch Design Week, but their visas got declined twice. I would envision in 2035 to be surrounded by all the community members that we work with present here in Dutch Design Week, for them to represent themselves and not for us to be sharing that story anymore, for them to be able to talk about what's happening in their space, to be able to show their craft, the techniques that they do in the community, and for us to have a shared space of knowledge. Our goal is to have remanufacturing hubs around the world for cities to take responsibility of their secondhand textiles and have all the community leaders here present, speaking, showcasing, and interacting with each other.
You have a vision, a plan, and now you have a deadline. See you in 10 years.
In 2035.
I'll do the conversation again. No, thanks so much for that question. That was really good. Is there anyone else who wants to join in?
Thank you for touching a point I'm still curious to discuss, which is migratory rights. I don't know if you can also share a little bit more of the justifications of not being able to have the designers here representing their own work. But I think, especially in this context of import, export, and passports for clothing, how would you reimagine the flow of the clothes when it comes to that social part?
Unfortunately, the EU is turning far right. I think all of us understand that political situation. We applied for visas twice now, and they've been declined because of risk of illegal immigration. And they're afraid that they will come here and not go back to their home countries. We had to supply the certificate of one of the designers' kids, the marriage certificate as well, and they still did not felt like they have enough financial and social ties to their home country for them to come here. Yeah, I think you touched on something about the waste flow. A lot of conversations that we have within the organization is that waste flows really freely between borders, but people with the knowledge are faced with political and continental barriers. Most of us are probably from a privileged background, have not had to think of traveling from one country to another and being declined access. And I think that's something that is very important to understand, especially in this climate right now.
There's a responsibility for talent platforms to provide the knowledge, provide the context to bring talent in, because I think talent should be borderless and limitless. That's also, of course, for us a puzzle. Who do we talk to in The Hague or in Brussels, and when do we submit what plans so we can convince them to have the talents over? Yeah, hopefully we can have the open borders for learning and knowledge exchange and all that. The collaboration you recently did with Uniqlo, that's something I'm personally curious about. How did that come about? How did it go? And how do you think it impacted their vision on upcycling?
They opened recently a lot of new stores, and one of them is the new store in Antwerp. For the opening, they did 10 local partnerships in Antwerp. They called it the Local Heroes campaign. There was, for example, a bakery who provided free coffee and bakery during the line in the morning, but there's also a vending machine with the cookies. They had 10 of these partnerships and then asked me if I wanted to upcycle their dead stock. I thought it was nice that they contacted me, but I'm always, for big brands, a little bit hesitant. Yeah. So then I had a lot of meetings with them. For me, it's also really important if I work with big brands like that my atelier is also involved. So if you want to work with me, you're also going to work with them, or we're not working. Then we had a lot of meetings, because for me it was really important that it's not a one-time thing and that it's not a marketing story. They came to our atelier, they met all of the people in our atelier. Then we decided to design a collection. We also gave a workshop during the pre-opening of the event. 2 of my seamstresses were making scrunchies on the spot and teaching the people how to do it. The ladies loved it. For me, I love to do it because my people, they can go with their kids to the store and say, I made that. I thought that was really nice. But it's a huge company, so a lot of the pieces had to go to Tadashi in Japan for his approval, because here is one of the pieces I made. There's my logo in big. That's for Uniqlo to sell. I think I'm the first person who made a recycled collection, self-produced and sold in the store. So I think for them it was a risk maybe. Yeah, but it turned out really nice. The workshop went really well. We're having a meeting next week. This cannot be a one-time thing, but let's see after this first thing how it went. If they are happy, if we're happy, to see what the next steps would be. It could be that maybe every few months we activate in the store and some of the ladies do something there, or maybe another collection. I have no idea yet, but I hope that we could actually build a long-term partnership with them.
That would be so nice if you would be able to add to that direction, future direction of the company, the vision on upcycling, sustainability.
And I thought it was nice that they gave it a shot.
It was cool. It was cool. Yeah, maybe a question I wanted to ask to conclude today's conversation on this is, what can we do for you as a platform? Or are you okay? Are you good?
I think New Order really launched me as a person. When I just started, I was working a lot, but there was not enough work. New Order gave me a lot of work, gave me a job, somewhere gave me stability in that moment when I needed it. And at the beginning, big meetings with big companies, Book in the time would sit next to me and do the meetings with me. What actually really helped me, because I still am quite naive sometimes and too nice sometimes. So I learned to be stricter and make those deals. This feels almost like coming home, and I think the lab can still mean a lot. For example, I'm bad at writing subsidy dossiers or business plans or where even find the subsidies, but not even that. I think like the expos that you do here, that puts designers on the map too. I think it's a great place, and there is still a lot to do together.
Yeah. And also credits to everyone who have been involved in the years beforehand. And we had a lot of changes in the team, of course, in the recent year. But it is really nice, of course, to hear back from you. Anabel, what can we do for you heading into the future?
I think, mainly about co-creative, co-designing projects. I think NOOF is a great example of a makerspace that we would also like to build in Accra. There are some initiatives there that are also building something like that. It's about distributing that knowledge or finding ways of providing access to designers working in the markets, working in these communities, to be able to access machines, technologies, and knowledge. We would love to do more EU projects that shares knowledge and to maybe pilot this remanufacturing blueprint that we hope to build. Yeah. NOOF has a great network also with Lotto Zero, with all these different European cities that are pushing the regenerative textile agenda. And I think it will be amazing to push a remanufacturing agenda as well together.
Let's do it together. Thank you so much for your contributions today. Can I have a warm applause for Anabel and Valentine Tinchant? It was so nice catching up with you. I really liked it. It was casual in a way, but also I learned a lot. Let's do this again sometime soon. Thanks to AV Partners who helped us out with the live stream and the recording so people online could tune in and we can have a rewatch of everything that has been discussed. That leaves me with thanking you for being here, for joining the conversation. I've been your host, Haiko, and hopefully see you next time. Thank you.